Renegade Immortal Episode 66. That sly dog, Wang Matzi, was really something else. The great Luo Jianzong disciples were risking their lives while he collected spirit jade from the back, only to claim he hadn't found anything. Continuing from the previous events, Wang Lin followed the spirit beast deep into the cave. He discovered that the stone walls were covered with countless thin threads, and in the center of the cave, a piece of spirit jade emitted a rich celestial aura. However, a skeleton next to the spirit jade emitted a faint pressure. Wang Lin's heart tightened. He quickly took out a mirror from his storage pouch and enveloped himself in a flash of gray light, blending in with the surrounding walls. Meanwhile, the great Luo Jianzong disciples also discovered the scene. They exchanged glances and tacitly chose to retreat, but they were too late. Dozens of thin threads suddenly shot out from a small hole, transforming into streaks of fluorescent light and speeding towards them. Third senior brother's expression changed drastically. With a loud shout, he combined his dual swords. Two sword energies roared out like dragons, severing any threads in their path. The sword energy then slammed into the small hole, blasting a 10-foot gap. Unbeknownst to them, this action had completely stirred up a hornet's nest. Even more threads, including one particularly noticeable black thread, poured out of the gap. Seeing this, the two disciples immediately fled. Their speed, however, was no match for the threads. After only a few steps, the threads, like a torrential flood, caught up. Just as they were about to be engulfed, third senior brother's eyes flashed. Without hesitation, he pushed sixth junior brother away with a palm to his back. However, sixth junior brother's eyes revealed a mocking expression. He grabbed third senior brother's arm. Originally at the early stage of nascent soul cultivation, he suddenly transformed, instantly displaying the strength of mid-stage nascent soul. He snatched the storage pouch and flying sword from third senior brother's hand and flung them backwards. Before third senior brother could speak, a swarm of threads surged forward, burrowing into every part of his body. In the blink of an eye, the physical body of the early-stage nascent soul cultivator was reduced to an empty shell. His nascent soul desperately flew out, but his good, junior brother had no intention of letting him escape. He formed hand seals and shot out several incantations. Instantly, his senior brother's nascent soul was trapped by a beam of light. As if that wasn't enough, the black thread arrived from behind, transforming into a black lightning bolt and piercing into his nascent soul. Moments later, accompanied by a scream, third senior brother's nascent soul was completely devoured. Sixth junior brother witnessed all of this, hidden, thinking to himself, "Thanks to senior brother's sacrifice, I have a chance to escape." He flashed out from his hiding spot, a large number of threads in hot pursuit. As these threads passed by, Wang Lin felt an unprecedented sense of tension, especially from the black thread. After the threads had moved further away, Wang Lin headed towards the hole blasted open by the sword energy. He quickly arrived at the entrance. However, the moment he entered, more threads emerged from the cave walls and lunged at him. Wang Lin flipped his hand, and his body was immediately enveloped in a black mist, successfully blocking the thread's attack. Because time was of the essence, Wang Lin didn't hesitate. He reached out to grab the flying sword in the skeleton's hand. However, a powerful pressure suddenly emanated from the flying sword. Wang Lin's hand felt as if it had been pricked by needles, instantly covered in tiny blood spots. At the same time, the threads chasing the great Luo Jianzong disciple suddenly changed direction and rushed back. Wang Lin witnessed this through his divine sense. He decisively abandoned the flying sword and grabbed the spirit jade beside it. After firmly grasping the jade, he rushed out of the cave at his fastest speed. Almost the instant he left, the threads poured back into the cave. A deafening roar then erupted from within. The black thread burst out and chased after Wang Lin. Wang Lin, while flying, released several wandering souls, intending to confuse his pursuer. But in mere moments, the wandering souls were rapidly disappearing. Through his divine sense, he clearly saw the black thread not only pass directly through the walls, but also, at an alarming speed, annihilate the wandering souls. The Spirit Beast's cave was full of tunnels, many buried during a past catastrophe. Under the impact of the two sword energies earlier, several areas had collapsed. Now, with the black thread rampaging through, it triggered a chain reaction, and a series of collapses began. Rumbling sounds came from all around. Wang Lin looked back to see a large section of the cave behind him collapse. He quickly investigated with his divine sense and discovered that more than half of the Spirit Beast's cave had been buried. The black thread had lost its way in the chaos. After a moment of thought, Wang Lin didn't leave immediately. He scanned his surroundings with his divine sense again, a look of surprise flashing in his eyes. It was the great Luo Jianzong's sixth junior brother, flying towards him. However, Wang Lin didn't know sixth junior brother's intentions. Even if sixth junior brother was at the mid-stage of nascent soul, Wang Lin's magical treasures were enough to contend with him. He had at least an 80% chance of winning. Soon after, a figure emerged from the wall Wang Lin was watching. The person appeared with a vigilant expression, looking at Wang Lin with flickering eyes. After carefully sizing up Wang Lin, he laughed, cupped his hands, and said, "Fellow Taoist, in this collapsing Spirit Beast's cave, it seems only the two of us remain." Wang Lin remained silent for a moment. "This place is collapsing. Instead of looking for a way out, fellow Taoist came to where I am. I wonder what your intention is." Sixth junior brother looked around and said, "Fellow Taoist, you followed me all the way. You must have seen that celestial being, right?" Wang Lin smiled faintly and didn't answer the question. Instead, he casually said, "What makes you say that, fellow Taoist?" Sixth junior brother's eyes flickered. "Fellow Taoist, there's no need for pretense. I am Sun Lei. You must have seen what happened just now. I'm not actually a member of the great Luo Jianzong." Sun Lei paused briefly and continued, "Fellow Taoist, I, Sun, don't like to beat around the bush. There are 3 treasures in that celestial being's cave: Spirit Jade, a flying sword, and a golden metal plate. I wonder how many of them you obtained, fellow Taoist." Wang Lin's gaze remained calm. He replied, "That black thread returned too quickly. I didn't obtain any treasures." After Wang Lin obtained the Spirit Jade and escaped the black thread's pursuit, he used his divine sense and discovered Sun Lei was still alive. Sun Lei inquired whether Wang Lin had obtained any of the 3 treasures within the cave. The sly fox, Wang Lin, claimed he hadn't found anything. Sun Lei frowned. He believed the person before him, like himself, was concealing his true cultivation level. Thinking this, Sun Lei composed himself and, cupping his hands, said, "Fellow Taoist, the Spirit Jade in the cave is formed from celestial energy condensed over countless years. It is indeed a priceless treasure. But in my opinion, that flying sword might be even more valuable." Wang Lin simply nodded slightly without speaking. His silence, however, made Sun Lei even more uncertain. Sun Lei then decided to invite Wang Lin to explore the Spirit Beast's cave again. He said, "Fellow Taoist, I'm afraid neither of us alone can obtain those 3 treasures from those celestial beings. But if we work together, our chances of success will greatly increase." Wang Lin's lips curled into a half-smile. He retorted, "And why should I join forces with you?" Sun Lei's expression darkened slightly. He felt a flicker of displeasure, but maintained his composure. Wang Lin then said, "I noticed that before coming here, fellow Taoist seemed to have sensed the spatial rift in the air." Sun Lei laughed heartily and casually took a jade slip from his storage pouch, tossing it to Wang Lin. "This is the Misty Tracking Art, a divine ability of the great Luo Jianzong. What harm is there in gifting it to you, fellow Taoist?" Wang Lin took the jade slip, scanned it briefly, and placed it into his storage pouch. He said indifferently, "You're quite straightforward. In that case, I won't beat around the bush either. That azure gourd in your 3rd senior brother's storage pouch. If you're willing to part with it, I'll join you on this adventure." Sun Lei's expression changed. He said solemnly, "Fellow Taoist, that gourd. I can't easily part with it. But If you help me obtain that flying sword, I'm willing to offer you a piece of Resting Soul Wood in return. Although this wood's effect might not be as good as Resting Soul Lake, it also has the ability to absorb celestial spiritual energy. He revealed a pained expression and took a white piece of wood from his storage pouch. After a moment of contemplation, Wang Lin thought to himself, using magical treasures against Sun Lei for a piece of Resting Soul Wood, it's hard to say if it's worth it. But considering the dangers and the lurking threat, Wang Lin agreed. Sun Lei sneered inwardly. Even if the person in front of him was hiding his cultivation, once he obtained the flying sword, killing him would be child's play. After the two cunning individuals reached an agreement, they soon stopped about 30 feet from the cave. Not far away lay a skeleton. It was indeed third senior brother who had died at the hands of Sun Lei. Sun Lei took several jade slips from his storage pouch and placed them around the area. He said gravely, "Fellow Taoist, I'll use a spell to lure out the celestial beings shortly. We'll do our best to eliminate them. If that black thread appears, we'll retreat immediately and meet at our prearranged location." Wang Lin nodded in agreement. Then, with a wave of his right hand, the restriction beast ring flew out as a streak of light. Upon landing, it transformed into a large toad, a thunder frog. A look of surprise flashed in Sun Lei's eyes. He was clearly more wary of Wang Lin's strength now. A short while later, Sun Lei quickly formed hand seals and chanted softly. The flying sword behind him rose into the air. The flying sword transformed into a beam of sword light, piercing straight into the depths of the cave like a rainbow across the sun. With a muffled sound, the flying sword quickly retreated and returned. However, a surging aura spread out from behind the sword. Even more terrifying, a massive ball of threads suddenly emerged, instantly releasing countless wriggling thin threads. These threads intertwined, forming a dense web that rapidly approached. The sight was enough to make one's scalp tingle. Once these wriggling things touched your body, you would surely meet the same fate as the skeleton on the ground. Sun Lei shouted. The jade slips he had left on the ground shattered, releasing multicolored smoke that spread towards the celestial threads. The threads writhed and fell to the ground, twitching continuously. However, the sheer number of threads was overwhelming. In just a few breaths, the multicolored smoke was exhausted. Seeing this, Sun Lei retreated continuously. Wang Lin's eyes flashed. The thunder frog beside him puffed up its belly. The next second, it spat out a thunderball crackling with lightning. Instantly, the threads were like crops being harvested, dissipating one after another. But it wasn't over yet. Wang Lin lightly tapped the thunder frog. Its belly puffed up again and spat out another thunderball. The dense threads now seemed to show fear for the first time, hesitant to approach. At this moment, a piercing roar suddenly erupted from the mass of threads. A thick black thread wriggled out, fearlessly charging towards the thunderball. Having spat out 2 thunderballs in a row, the thunder frog looked exhausted, its body listless. The moment Wang Lin saw the black thread appear, he immediately recalled the thunder frog and ran. At the same time, he touched his forehead, summoning numerous wandering souls that scattered in all directions. Sun Lei hesitated and ultimately decided against taking the risk. He stayed where he was, waiting for the threads to chase Wang Lin into the cave. It was simply too dangerous. One wrong move could mean a gruesome end. Along the way, wandering souls passed through the surrounding walls and returned to Wang Lin's forehead. He checked briefly and found their numbers hadn't decreased. He couldn't help but feel relieved. This time, the black thread wasn't chasing him. It had targeted Sun Lei instead. Wang Lin soon arrived at the cave entrance where he had agreed to meet Sun Lei. He sat down calmly and spread his divine sense, searching for Sun Lei. Thousands of meters away, in a hidden cave, Wang Lin finally caught sight of him. Sun Lei looked quite disheveled, with several wounds on his body and a broken arm. He had clearly been through a fierce battle. Seeing this, a glint flashed in Wang Lin's eyes. He used an earth evasion technique and quickly traveled towards Sun Lei. Seeing Wang Lin arrive, Sun Lei's expression became even uglier. He flicked his right hand and stared at Wang Lin with a gloomy gaze. However, Wang Lin said calmly, "Brother Sun, rest assured and recover. I will stand guard for you." Sun Lei was stunned. He hadn't expected Wang Lin to not take advantage of his weakened state. Although suspicious, he still politely replied, "Thank you, fellow Taoist." After 3 hours, Sun Lei's cultivation was finally fully restored. His gaze towards Wang Lin softened considerably. He stood up and said, "Fellow Taoist, my cultivation has recovered. Shall we explore the inner cave?" This time, the black thread charged towards Sun Lei, not Wang Lin. After a bitter fight, Sun Lei was left battered and with a severed arm. Wang Lin eventually located the injured Sun Lei with his divine sense. After Sun Lei recovered, they decided to explore the cave again. The two soon arrived at the cave once more. Just as they reached the entrance, a large number of threads suddenly emerged from the depths. Sun Lei's eyes narrowed. "Fellow Taoist, stand back. This time, I will avenge my severed finger." He patted his storage pouch, and a black fan flew out. The fan, made of an unknown material, immediately filled the surroundings with a chilling aura. Even the walls instantly frosted over with a layer of black ice. As the black ice rapidly spread, it reached Wang Lin in the blink of an eye. Wang Lin's expression remained calm. He shook his restriction banner, and a black mist emanated from his body, blocking the cold air. At the same time, Wang Lin retrieved the old man's wooden carving from his storage pouch. Meanwhile, after taking a deep breath, Sun Lei's nascent soul emerged. He grasped the black fan and swung it forward. A gust of black wind roared from the fan, rushing towards the surging threads. The threads stalled under the force of the black wind. Then, black ice rapidly spread, covering the entire space, including Wang Lin. Seeing this, Sun Lei withdrew his nascent soul and rushed towards the cave entrance. He laughed, "Fellow Taoist, my magical power is limited. I can only seal them temporarily and go ahead. I'll come back to save you later." Wang Lin's eyes remained calm, a faint, almost imperceptible smile playing on his lips. He had already seen through Sun Lei's scheme. Sun Lei had waited to unleash the power of his fan clearly to use Wang Lin as bait, attracting the revived thread's attack while he made his escape. Otherwise, even if he obtained the flying sword, he would have difficulty escaping the thread's relentless pursuit. Wang Lin, however, wouldn't let him have his way. He had been wary of Sun Lei all along. He tightly gripped the old man's wooden carving. Just as the black ice was about to seal him, a powerful aura of time emanated from the carving. Within this aura, the flow of time was under his control. He wasn't afraid of the black ice's seal. Sun Lei, thinking Wang Lin was completely sealed, rushed to a spot 30 feet from the cave. To his surprise, Wang Lin, using the aura of time, broke free from the seal. He weaved through the icebound threads and arrived in front of Sun Lei even faster. Wang Lin said calmly, "Fellow Taoist son, you seem to have forgotten something. You haven't given me the resting soul wood yet. Why are you in such a hurry to enter the cave?" Seeing this, Sun Lei's expression turned ugly. Time was of the essence, and he couldn't afford to hesitate. He quickly took out the resting soul wood from his storage pouch and tossed it to Wang Lin. Wang Lin caught the wood and, with a flash, entered the cave. Although displeased, Sun Lei knew this wasn't the time to argue. He quickly followed. Wang Lin was holding a golden metal plate from the skeleton's chest. Without hesitation, Sun Lei reached for the flying sword in the skeleton's hand. The next second, he screamed in pain. His right hand was instantly covered in countless bloody spots, as if pierced by something sharp. Wang Lin, unconcerned, turned and ran. He knew the flying sword was untouchable. Whoever touched it would suffer. Sun Lei's eyes were bloodshot. Unwilling to give up, he reached for the flying sword again. Although he grabbed the sword, his right hand was mangled in the golden light. Defeated, Sun Lei could only painfully give up on the flying sword. With a roar of frustration, he rushed out of the cave, calculating the time. He knew he still had a slim chance of escaping. However, fate had other plans. At that very moment, the previously dormant black thread suddenly vibrated violently, breaking free from the black ice's restraints. With a piercing roar, it charged towards Sun Lei. Sun Lei's face paled. His sex treasures were known for their precision. 10 breaths should have been 10 breaths. Why had it worn off so quickly? It was because the black thread had absorbed the Thunderball's energy and now contained a trace of the power of heaven and earth. This had shortened the seal's duration. Stunned, Sun Lei had no time to dodge. As the black thread closed in, the shadow of death loomed over him, intensified by the sight of Wang Lin quickly leaving above. A look of madness flashed in his eyes. He slapped his forehead, and instantly, a black bead expanded outwards. This bead, formed from centuries of his cultivation, contained the essence of his nascent soul, crucial for forming a second nascent soul in the future. If he lost this bead, his cultivation would fall from mid-nascent soul to core formation. Sun Lei closed his eyes and shouted, "Explode!" The bead flashed with black light. A black ring-shaped wave rapidly expanded. The black thread, bearing the brunt of the impact, let out a sharp shriek and quickly recoiled, barely withstanding the wave. The other threads that had just broken free from the black ice were dissipated by the wave. Even the surrounding cave walls couldn't withstand the force and collapsed. Even more terrifying, the bead's power reached the limit that the celestial fragment could endure. Instantly, the entire fragment began to shake violently. More and more cracks appeared in the sky. The magma on the ground, as if stimulated, erupted skyward. The world seemed to be enveloped in beams of deathly light. At this critical juncture, Sun Lei's body self-destructed, vanishing from the spot. The situation turned dire. The celestial fragment collapsed. Please give us a like and subscribe, fellow Taoists. Let's continue our chat in the next episode.